Whenever I teach a literature class, I often find myself talking about the concept of a close reading. And so I figured I'd put together a video to go over some of the parts of a close reading and how they can be really useful in opening up a text for deeper understanding and a way to get more satisfaction out of the process of reading literature. So for the purposes of this presentation and for this class, I want to define a close reading as the process of taking a section from a story, which is typically not more than one or two sentences, and analyzing it in three specific ways. And I'll be talking about why it's important to focus on just a couple sentences as well. So the first part of a close reading is to take that quote and put it into an immediate context of the story itself. In other words, what is happening in the scene? Who are the characters being depicted? What is the setting? What has just happened before or afterwards in the plot? What you're not doing at this point is critical thinking. You're just summarizing and contextualizing the action. So it's not about reading deeply into anything at this point. It's more allowing your reader to focus exactly on the action that you're about to go more deeply into. So the second part of a close reading is what would be literary analysis proper, and that is that you look at a very specific quote very carefully. You look at the diction, you look at the syntax, you look at symbolic uses, images, sensory images, contrasts, patterns, things that jump out as interesting or strange. You try to draw a line throughout the whole story and see, is this something that's happened before in a different way? Does it happen after this in a different way? Is it a theme or a motif or some sort of current running through the story? I like to talk about this as the acorn phenomenon, which is, that the acorn contains the entire oak tree in this tiny little nugget. And so can you think about these two sentences or this one sentence as somehow containing the whole story in a tiny nugget? And then you would go to the very broad universality of the idea. So you've just spent some time looking at the acorn, and now you look at the universe. How does this story, how does this phrase, this couple sentences that you picked, connect with the human condition, the concept of being human in the modern world? And do you feel that there's some lasting truth to be found in this? And so that would be what you end your analysis on, a sort of a resounding note of the universalizing factors at play here. Okay, so we're going to now jump into the close reading process directly, and I've picked a quote from Leo Tolstoy's After the Ball. And here it is. Then, pulling a suede glove onto his right hand, he said with a smile, "Everything according to the rules," took his daughter's hand, and stood 1/4 turned, waiting for the music. So to put this into context, this takes place in 1840s Tsarist Russia, in St. Petersburg, right before Lent. The speaker is Ivan, who's also the main character of the story. He's in his probably early 20s at this point, a college student. He's talking about his beloved's father, so Varenka's father, the colonel, who's waiting to dance with Varenka. And he is putting on his glove, standing poised, ready to dance. This happens in the first third or first half of the short story. So now for the analysis part. Looking at this, I would point out, and I'm going to use our pen option of PowerPoint, 4 things. The suede glove, the smile, the rules, and the music. So in this one sentence, I'm going to look at these 4 images or concepts and spend some time trying to make meaning of them, looking for a pattern or looking for some deeper significance in them. So, looking at this in a structural way, I've broken the story into 2 parts, what happens at the ball and what happens after the ball. So, the glove. At the ball, the glove is worn to keep his hands clean so that he will not soil the white dress of his daughter Varenka. So this speaks to the larger image that everyone is dressed up at the ball, that it's light and airy and gay, and people are drinking and having a wonderful time. It's about youth and innocence and elegance and wealth and high society. And after the ball, the same glove is a glove he wears when he punches the puny soldier for not being brutal on the deserter when he's caught and forced to go through the gauntlet. So in that case, the clean glove has become bloody. Same glove, only hours later in the story. Smile. So the smile is tender at the ball. It reminds him of Varenka's smile. Their eyes both gleam the same way. It seems to connote goodness, gentleness, caring, affection, all of these positive qualities which connect the father with the daughter, which connects Ivan with this bucolic vision of what he thinks he's going to become in the future. And then you have the frown of the colonel when he sees Ivan at the parade ground after the ball, and Ivan says that he feels like he, being Ivan, was caught doing something shameful. That's a menacing frown. It's a frown that shows disapproval, disprobation. In some ways, you could even say that there's a sinister sense to the frown, that there's something very violent and barely controlled being held there. The rules of the dance, of the mazurka, are part of courtship rules. You have a strict partner, there are roles you play. Part of what happens is that Ivan and Varenka break some rules by dancing together more often than they're supposed to, and that is all part of like the larger dance, the larger game of this courtship ritual. It's very stylized, it's meant to be very public, it's meant to allow appropriately suited partners to join. And then after the ball, we see the rules are involving the court-martial. And those rules are, the Tartar was caught deserting from the military, so he was forced to go through a gauntlet and was brutally beaten. And all the soldiers were forced to do the brutal beating. And so again, these rules involve being part of a whole, being part of the military. What happens when you break with that? What are the consequences? So in this sense, it's like rules as in laws. Then the music at the ball provides unity, sweeps the whole feeling up together in this uplifted kind of sense of joy and vitality. And that same function of music creates discord. It's a shrill, harsh sound in the early morning that draws Ivan to this semi-private parade ground early morning beating. So when you take all that together and you look at that, one sentence in a close way, and you focus on certain aspects of it, you could then think about, so what? How do we make a universalizing move with this? What would be the next step? And so I spent some time thinking about it, and I figured that the idea of the profound duality of existence works well at this point. The idea that you are not either X or Y, but you are both. That the colonel is not good or evil. He is, I would argue, potentially every bit as much of both qualities given the context that he's in. You could also look at it as the idea of appearances versus reality, and how just looking at things as they appear doesn't give you necessarily a true sense of how they truly are. I hope this was helpful, and I look forward to seeing what you all come up with when you apply this concept to your journals.